So that concludes our presentations for the day. I'd like to open the floor for questions and for discussion. I know we're all very excited, but there must be some questions about the presentations.
Yeah, thank you very much. May I laud my sisters for their presentations. I picked two things. From our sister from America, the other side, when she was presenting, she said one thing. These people, they need to be shown that they are worth. That is the human dignity. Because when they are being processed and they feel that they are valued, they are open and they will assist the system. And also what I have also picked is awareness for the community to understand that this is going on under our very noses, and we need to be vigilant to identify, and the moment you identify a victim, go straight, or a perpetrator, to raise the alarm. Thank you.
That's it? We've solved the problems? Anybody else? Marcelo.
Perhaps it's something I would like to ask to the group behind me, which I cannot see. One of our biggest problems when we discuss the issue of organ trafficking, as I mentioned before, is the issue of who do we prosecute. And in clinical medicine, both the person who drives the act, so both the person who needs the organ, as well as the person who provides the organ, are both seen as vulnerable subjects. And this is a major legal issue for us. We never know how to address that. And perhaps I would like to hear what the opinion is of the people who have dealt with this in different contexts.
Maybe I can add to that. I think it would be a lot easier to prosecute if we all focused on holding the victims harmless, but going after the perpetrators, the middle people, or the people in business who are obviously those profiting from organ trafficking or other types of trafficking.
Yo voy a responder haciendo la salvedad que no es mi especialidad, pero como la pregunta fue para nuestro sector, en la mayoría de nuestros países lo que ocurre es la existencia de un órgano estatal. En el caso de Argentina es un instituto nacional. ¿Tienen problemas con la traducción? ¿No hay traducción? No hay traducción al inglés.
Yes, right now.
Ahora sí. Bueno, repito entonces ahora. En nuestro país, en Argentina, hay un instituto nacional que regula la ablación y los implantes. O sea, todo lo que es materia de trasplante de órganos. Es un ente regulador nacional, o sea, para todo el país, que involucra tanto a los efectores estatales como a los privados. Todos tienen que registrar los pedidos que hay y se hace una lista de necesidades de órganos y se les da una urgencia de acuerdo a la condición de cada persona, y luego hay un registro de donantes y los donantes en emergencia, que son los que dieron ahora ya todo el mundo está digamos, con una suerte de aceptación de que dona sus órganos al momento de morir. Entonces, ese instituto, cuando la persona que fallece es apta para que se usen sus órganos, directamente regula la distribución del órgano y lo traslada al lugar donde se necesita. Quiere decir que todas las experiencias que están por fuera de ese sistema son ilegales. La única posibilidad es la posibilidad de utilizar ese registro. Yo creo que es un buen sistema y que ha permitido erradicar cualquier posibilidad de negociación o de tráfico, ¿no?
My question then comes around the issue of illegal transplants. So you were saying anything out of this is illegal. So anything outside of this reality is illegal, and I understand that, and this is the same for us. The problem is what next? And how do you address that, especially also with people traveling, so going across jurisdictional borders? How do we move forward? And in a community like this, what is our next step to try and prevent organ trafficking?
And I appreciate what you're saying about Argentina, but in Costa Rica, there was a major problem with trafficking and illegal transplantation. In Colombia, a major problem with transplantation, organ trafficking. So I would be happily surprised if there was no problem in Argentina. And I think what Elmi's asking is, given all the wealth of judges around here, we want to hear what the approach is. Do we go after the patient who needs an organ, who gets an organ, or do we just go after the middleman? And I think all the judges can think about that for your own countries.
Thank you. I'm looking at the subject of how do you deal with the legality or the illegality of organ transplant and all that. And you look at it the way they're asking the question, what if it's cross-border? Then we need to have international laws, an international law that is dealing with it. And from this discussion, we can have judges coming in together with the medical practitioners, with the prosecutors, all the stakeholders coming forward to forge a way forward. How do we deal with this? Because you look at it, if someone is being taken to South Africa or to the US and then the transplant is done in another country, then these laws in this country might not apply in another country. So it cannot be dealt with at the national level. It can only be dealt with at the international level.
I just want to ask about issues of organs in a traditional sense. Is the data of community members who are being harvested, outside of the formal structure, and their organs or whatever are being used, like if I have to make an example of Africa, like in Muti, traditional medicine and all that, is that also being looked at, data being compiled on that? Because I think in South Africa we have a number of cases where people were not convicted under Trafficking Act, but under the Local Organs Act and all that, under issues of trafficking. How is this going to be dealt with? Because that is basically one question that I'm being asked every time, that we, cultural aspects, believe in Muti, you want to succeed in business and all those things, and then they go and harvest organs. How is that being dealt with?
So I think we need to distinguish between living people who donate an organ or give an organ, and then living people who get paid or get exploited in giving an organ, and then people who, after death, give an organ or is exploited to give an organ, and then the next one is the Muti issue, or organs that are not being used for transplantation. And the issues in these different realities are very different. And to confuse them and bring them into one discussion, I think, is a problem, because the issues are not the same. So for organ trafficking, we're really talking about people who are being exploited by using one of their organs for the purpose of transplantation. And when you look at MUTI and the use of human organs or human body parts for the purposes of medicine or religious affairs, I think the issues are very different. And the law needs to distinguish between these things in a very different way. So my view is that MUTI is a completely different issue and doesn't belong in the reality of organ trafficking as such. And that organ trafficking, if you use the definition of the European Convention or the Declaration of Istanbul, is strictly related to using the organ for the purpose of transplantation.
Yes, thank you.
So in Africa, there are more reasons to take organs. Also this question, religious question, so it's more complicated.
Yes, and organ trafficking versus organ harvesting for purpose of organ transplantation. So I do believe it's a more common problem perhaps, but not with the purpose for organ transplantation. And we had a discussion during lunchtime also about people who are found dead and then some of the organs have been removed. And although I think this is a true problem, it's very unlikely that those organs have been removed for the purpose of transplantation. So those organs have possibly been removed for other purposes or MUTI or religious reasons, and there are many different cultural issues that could drive those practices.
Judge Rosalind.
Thank you again. Just to Dr. Muller. Now, I remember in the morning you mentioned that the medical profession, and we understand because of their oath of office, there is this reluctance. Is there a way whereby you can come up with, like for example, in the court system, where family issues are concerned? You know, we had that problem of disclosing names, but we came up with a way of passing on the information using only the initials of the names of the children involved. And is there a way whereby the medical profession, because we need you to work along with us, where you can come up with these using initials, even if you turn them around? What we need is the information to get across for us to get on with the exercise. Is it possible?
Yes, I think that this is something that we all realize in the professional community, that data collection is becoming an essential part for moving forward. And if we don't have the data, we actually don't know the scope of the problem, and it's very difficult to plan. So data collection can take place, and there are different prohibiting factors why data collection has not been on the cards yet. And some of it is simply because of funding and about people driving it, and some of it is the reluctance of the professionals to report their patients. I think in the last 2 years, 3 years of Declaration of Istanbul meeting groups that I've been in, people have really moved towards the idea that they should be collecting data and that they would be providing sanitized data to a database where the patient cannot be prosecuted. I think Nancy also has a comment on that.
Well, you raise a very important issue, and I'd like to relate the experience that we've had with China recently. You know that in China, the officials used executed prisoners as a source of donor organs. And this was actually condoned by the government. That practice has stopped as of 2015, but from time to time, and very frequently, we hear about patients going to China with a middleman getting organs. And now we have the agreement from the Chinese government to actually have a liaison within the Ministry of Health who will investigate every time we hear of one of those kinds of cases. The issue and the challenge is that to investigate a case like that, you need details. And as Elmi said, the doctors may be reluctant to collect details. The patients are reluctant to tell us details. I recently had a patient of Chinese descent who came back from China, but he wasn't eager to tell me who his middleman was, and he wasn't eager to tell me the name of his surgeon. So I can call our liaison in China, but if I don't have the details, I don't know how they can really do an adequate investigation and prosecution.
Judge Solomon?
My question is to Nancy. I know you do a lot of organ transplants in the U.S. generally, not you particularly, but generally. What's the position about a donor who is willing, upon his or her death, that the organs be used for somebody else who is ill? Do you disclose the name to the survivor who is using those organs? Or is it unethical? You just say, well, there's a donor, you will be doing your own operation tomorrow, we'll give you the heart, we've just got the heart ready for you to be transplanted. How do you do it? That's the first part. The second is some people do give their organs willingly for research. In the most recent times, there is a lady in the U.S. who is over 80 years old. She's a model, and she's been a model all her life for 73, up to the age of 73. And she's just said, my whole body should be given out to the medical doctors for research. She's willing to, I should be taken as soon as I die, and I should be used for research. So how do you see it in line with ethics in your profession as a doctor?
It is correct that we do more transplants in the United States than any other country in the world. China is rapidly approaching that number. We have laws in the United States that dictate if an individual signs a card willing to be a donor, or if they've made that pronouncement before their death, that decision actually trumps or outweighs what the family might say if taken to court. So the individual has their own right to say that they want to be an organ donor. Now, we study every organ donor to make sure that we know what the risks are to a potential recipient. And of course, we respect the privacy of the donor. We don't disclose that information to the recipient, but we do tell the recipient potentially important information so that they can decide if they want to use a given organ from a given donor. For example, if a donor had a previous history of cancer 20 years ago, it's a very low chance that that cancer would be transmitted to the recipient, but we give that information so that the recipient can make informed consent as well. We also give people the opportunity to donate their bodies for science, and I think that's the case that you were alluding to. I don't know who that model is, but you were alluding to in your question. So that person could be an organ donor, although at 83, not all the organs are perfect for use. But they could be a tissue. They could be a specimen for a medical school or for a tissue examination. That would be fine too.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask this question. I don't know, it may sound like, it's coming from an ignorance perspective, but is there the possibility of having a very unwilling donor? Because in our part of the world, people just disappear, and they're never seen again. And we don't know whether there is the possibility that such people are being used for organ harvesting. Because after that, it goes very quiet, and, people just, there's nobody to answer any questions about what could have happened. So in the process of harvesting, an unwilling person or unaware, a person who is not aware of this process of organ harvesting, is it possible in the medical world for such a thing to happen, and have you come across such cases?
Well, it's a difficult one because the truth is we don't know. Certainly, if you have a person who is well and living and he's been captured under circumstances that you describe, it's possible to take the patient to theater, give the person an anesthetic, and harvest all the organs. It is possible. Whether it is happening is a different question. So to do that, you would need a true criminal theater with doctors, nurses, everybody involved. It will have to be set up in such a way that these patients can be brought there and this can happen and the recipients are lined up. It would be a complex setup, I would think, but I don't think it's possible to say it's impossible.
And of course, what you're questioning may have been what is analogous to what happened in China in the past, where these individuals who are used as donors were actually prisoners. But that was a system that was very complex and organized from the very top echelons of the government. So it's unlikely to have such a system in the criminal world, but nothing's impossible.
Do you have some information about this? Because in the other meeting that we have here, if I not remember well, I don't remember, but someone said that have some experience about this practice. Do you know something?
No, Bishop, but we have situations where people are not accounted for, or they're just, nobody knows where they went. Their families are always looking for their person, and somehow, you can't seem to get answers. They report the matter to the police. The police do what they can and then come up with blanks at the end of the day. So I guess the question is it likely for such, things to happen to people in the situation today where there's organ harvesting, and that may be what would have happened to that person. But it is a big question for us because we just sometimes have no answer for people who disappear.
So that makes me very sad, because you are assuming that it relates to transplant and organ retrieval, an illegal process from somebody who disappears. Why don't we just assume that the person was murdered?
Well, we don't have a body in most cases, so you can't really conclude that they were murdered. And in some cases, you can't find a reason for them to have been so, for that disappearance. Could just be an innocent person. They were going about their business in the market one day, and suddenly they were not there. So these are the questions that we ask. Is it possible that, they could have ended up in a ring like that? Who knows?
I think it's less likely than some other nefarious event happening to that individual. And as a transplant professional, those kinds of stories, of course, give transplant a bad name. It makes people suspicious of transplant, and it makes people not embrace transplant as the miracle which it really is, which is really unfortunate.
And perhaps if I can comment as well, that the whole process of taking out organs and getting them ready to reuse in somebody else is quite a complex surgical procedure which requires a trained surgeon. It's not something somebody can just do who even a general surgeon off the street wouldn't be able to just do this. It requires a skilled operation with preservation fluid and an infrastructure that is for those organs to work. So I would think if this is happening somewhere in the way you're describing it, then it would be, have to be close to a hospital where this can happen, where recipients can be flown in, where the tissue typing can be done. So it will be, it will then be a whole infrastructure of resources with skilled surgeons who provide the surgical expertise.
Maybe someone from Brazil can say something about this, because people say that in Brazil they are something.
Não, no Brasil a gente tem um sistema também organizado, né? Os transplantes são feitos apenas pelo SUS, que é o Sistema Único de Saúde. Então, as pessoas que estão na fila para transplante estão na fila pelo SUS. E também, como a Andrés falou, com uma série de critérios que colocam elas num determinado nível de prioridade. E as doações também são colocadas através dessa central. A questão é, provavelmente temos também uma rede extraoficial, da qual, às vezes, se ouve falar, mas mais como boato, a gente não tem conhecimento ou não houve investigações sérias ainda, a ponto de eu poder afirmar aqui que existe um mercado negro, ou se ouvem falar boatos de que existem fazendas de pessoas com a finalidade de transplante, mas isso eu não me animo a afirmar aqui por falta de conhecimento mais aprofundado. Então, no Brasil, o sistema oficial é organizado e funciona relativamente bem.
Perhaps just one more comment. We're talking about human trafficking in general. We've discussed during the course of the day human trafficking for the purpose of labor, for the purpose of sex, for the purpose of organ trafficking, and perhaps the type of situation that was highlighted before. We must remember that it's much easier to perhaps think that those people have been recruited in one of those other aspects of human trafficking.
O problema no Brasil é que se tem a intenção de terminar com o Sistema Único de Saúde. Então, a gente chegou até um determinado ponto de desenvolvimento e, atualmente, a tendência é regressiva. Essa é uma grande preocupação.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you. I wanted to comment about the presentation given by Madam Susan Bach of the US. Her presentation had a lot of data, a lot of information, very precise, and she talked about the Polaris project, which is it's also managing the data collection in that state. I was wondering, because we are here to learn from each other, maybe you could guide us, because, for example, like Kenya, we have very poor collection of data. In a year, we can have, like what Uganda, I think it was Uganda or Cote d'Ivoire said, it was Cote d'Ivoire, they said they had 7 people who had been trafficked in 1 year. So that is understating the information. So maybe you could guide us on how they do this data collection and how they manage to get such precise, large numbers. Thank you.
So Polaris is a non-profit organization, an NGO, but the U.S. State Department does give it money. So it has good resources, and it's just the most successful organization that is dedicated to combating human trafficking in the United States. So I guess the lesson from that is you can do partnering with NGOs, hopefully encourage NGOs to get involved in this area, and I know the speaker from Uganda mentioned that Uganda uses NGOs, and I kind of am familiar with a number of your countries and know that there are several NGOs that are active in this area, but Polaris has been the most successful and leading NGO in the United States. So they have resources, and I think the added component would be that if you can get governmental funding to at least, they're not totally funded by the United States government, but if your governments can give some money and maybe partner with non-governmental organizations. I had a question for the Pan American Committee. How do you guys decide what issues you're going to be focusing on and what you're working on together as a committee?
Bueno, nosotros nos hemos reunido en diferentes países. Como pertenecemos a estados diferentes, hemos tenido la coordinación de reunirnos para planificar primero para organizarnos con sus estatutos, con sus dignatarios. Nos reunimos en Brasil. Luego fuimos convocados a Perú, a Lima y a Pucallpa, donde seguimos organizando y revisando. En cada uno de estos encuentros, nosotros, los representantes de cada país, explicamos e informamos a los demás miembros del comité cuál es la situación política en cada uno de los países de América Latina que conocemos, cuáles son las dificultades, cuál es la respuesta de los gobiernos, cómo podríamos integrarnos acciones a desarrollar. Esto lo hemos hecho de forma presencial y cada cual pues subvenciona sus gastos, excepto en Perú, que fuimos invitados. En segundo lugar, pues por las distancias y el problema de tiempo, a través del WhatsApp o en conectividad planteamos situaciones, establecemos consensos, tomamos decisiones. Frente a las dificultades, las protestas sociales, los estallidos que se están presentando, que se han dado en Brasil, en Chile, en Bolivia, en Colombia, el comité coordina, delibera, redacta y finalmente vota cómo nos vamos a pronunciar. Hemos hecho denuncias ante la Comisión Interamericana, por ejemplo, por los temas de los incendios en la selva africana en Brasil. Cada uno de los miembros del comité está pendiente de las situaciones. Hemos asumido el rol no solamente de destacar las causas sociales que adelantamos en el caso de Colombia, la defensa y elevar en el conocimiento académico, en el conocimiento público ante los medios de comunicación los problemas de la lucha por la tierra, el acceso y la formalización de tierras. En Brasil, los temas de los derechos laborales, muchas otras propuestas más. En Argentina, Andrés es una persona pues reconocida y cada uno de nosotros hace un recorrido histórico, sociológico, cultural, desde la información directa, la verificación, para poder dar elementos que permitan en forma responsable y de manera prudente pronunciarnos, promover causas y planificar acciones a desarrollar. estamos casi que a diario en contacto. En esta oportunidad, por ejemplo, no nos acompañó la doctora Janet Tello de Ecuador, pero la hemos tenido de Perú, corrijo, pero hemos estado al tanto con ella, Daniel Urrutia de Chile, Gustavo Daniel de Argentina, pero igual pues nos hemos fortalecido, hemos creado una fraternidad, tenemos la suficiente confianza el uno y el otro en el comité, y lo importante de esto es dar información veraz, información responsable, y las medidas antes de generarlas o antes de entrar a acciones son lo suficientemente ponderadas. Desde que nos reunimos acá hemos permanecido activos, tenemos pensado, por ejemplo, dónde luego nos vamos a convocar en Colombia, qué vamos a hacer a nivel de cumbre, cómo vamos a organizar la siguiente cumbre, cómo nos vamos a subsidiar. Andrés lideró con Daniel la página de internet para que allí pues cada uno de ustedes, ahora la podemos dar a conocer, conozca cuál es el origen, el propósito, la organización, las acciones que ha desarrollado el comité. Está en varios idiomas, está en español, está en inglés, está en portugués, de tal manera que puedan tener información. El comité ha querido ser lo suficientemente cognitivo e informativo, pero también transparente en el sentido de hacer públicas sus acciones. Esa es la manera como nosotros hemos venido trabajando. Además, por lo menos en Colombia, buscamos tener interlocución con los gobernantes nacionales, regionales, estar al tanto de esas situaciones, no intervenir porque nuestra misión y nuestra naturaleza no es cogobernar ni usurpar competencias, pero sí elevar en la vista pública los problemas sociales y de una u otra manera buscar que se dé una respuesta seria. Nos conmueve muchísimo lo que está pasando en Chile, lo que está pasando en Bolivia, y el comité ha sido oído, ha sido de una manera u otra atendido en sus comunicados, en sus denuncias, en las, entre comillas, podríamos decir, protestas escritas que hemos hecho por la violación de los derechos humanos, por las violaciones de los derechos sociales, por la respuesta agresiva a las protestas sociales, a las reivindicaciones sociales. No sé si alguno de mis compañeros quiere aportar algún elemento respecto de la forma como hemos venido trabajando y organizándonos.
And I was just thinking that obviously government funding or partial funding for data collection would be the best because it would provide a long-term solution, but if that's not possible, a shorter-term solution, for example, the nonprofit organization I talked about, Lawyers Without Borders, did a 4-year, they got a grant that funded a 4-year human trafficking project in Liberia. So that was, I'm not sure how much data collection was possible, but that would be a 4-year period of time. You could collect some pretty interesting data and informative data. Their 4-year project was training on human trafficking at different levels, at the lawyer level, prosecutor level, magistrate level, judge level, investigator level, and so they came back for every year for 4 years from 2012 to 2016. So reaching out to maybe a nonprofit that's active in that area would be a good idea. And then maybe folding in a data collection element to that project could help on that front as well in response to Jane's question.
So one option for data collection on human trafficking for organ transplantation is to work through laboratories. In Cape Town, in our tissue typing lab, we receive round about 500 samples per year, which is coming into South Africa via Kenya. It's not necessarily Kenyan samples, it comes from a hub that's collected in Kenya, and that tissue typing comes down to South Africa. Now, when you look at the number of transplants that happen in countries like Kenya or Nigeria, you're sitting with numbers like 30 or 40 per year, official numbers. And those two things don't tie up. So if we would want to look at data collection specifically related to organ trafficking, that might be one place where we could potentially work together.
Any other questions or comments for today? Judge Solomon.
A question for is it Susan? Yes. You spoke about Lawyers Without Borders. Do they just deal with human trafficking, or do they handle other criminal activities?
Lawyers Without Borders, their mission is focused on rule of law, and but they have a specific focus on human trafficking in Africa. So I had the countries, I know Tanzania, Kenya. There was also non-African countries, Paraguay, Thailand. But so they have a specialty in human trafficking, and they teach both substantive ways to address human trafficking with investigators and prosecutors and judges. But they also do the trial advocacy part of it, where they teach prosecutors how to effectively use techniques to successfully prosecute traffickers. They teach judges how to handle human trafficking cases. They teach investigators how to maintain the integrity of investigations because of the unique aspects of prosecuting human trafficking cases. And then they do have plans for 2 new programs in 2 African countries that just have not been identified yet.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think that concludes today then. And you guys can take some coffee and tea outside, and I believe the buses come at 6:30.